Hey everybody, welcome to Truth Be Told. I'm Tony Sweet. We have the one and only Captain Ron on the other side of the table. We have a great show for you guys today. Another Contact in the Desert speaker, and we want to introduce her now. We have Dr. Lynne Kitei, is an internationally acclaimed physician and health educator. She is the author of the Phoenix Lights book and the award-winning documentary. She was a key witness to the historic and I wish I was there, and unexplained mass sighting throughout Arizona on March 13th, 1997, and has been studying ever since. So please welcome to Truth Be Told, the one and only Dr. Lynne Kitei. How you doing?
Nice to see you both. Thank you, Tony and Captain Ron, for having me. And I'll tell you, there's so much mis and disinformation concerning the Phoenix Lights. One of the main reasons I came forward after thousands of people saw what I had been seeing for 2 years and documenting on film. The only person that we know of that's taken 35 millimeter photographs that have been analyzed and authenticated by university and military optical experts as true unknowns. 2 years before the mass sighting, up
Oh,
close
really?
and personal, and then 2 months
Yeah,
before.
before we get into the mass sighting, start there. Please tell us what you saw yourself before this even happened in Phoenix.
2 years before the mass sighting, and I always go back to this sighting in February of '95. I had no interest or knowledge in this topic at all. Neither did my husband, who's also a physician. Healthy skeptics, but nonetheless, we're a see it to believe it type people. And literally outside, literally and figuratively outside our bedroom window, one wall of our bedroom is a window. And we have a panoramic view of the city skyline. We're pretty high on the mountain in Paradise Valley, Arizona, and we know what planes and helicopters and streetlights and car lights look like. We are quite familiar with what's out there and we enjoy the view. And this was very different. In fact, my husband was standing at the window at the time. It happened to be the night before my birthday eve, and don't believe in coincidence anymore. And I was in the other room, leisurely taking a bath, and he was speaking with my mother-in-law, who had called to wish me happy birthday. And suddenly, and he nothing ever ruffled his feathers. He said, "What the hell is that? Get over here quick!" And I grabbed my tail, ran over to the window, and wringing wet, we both watched right in front of us, actually a little below us, over a very treacherous desert landscape. We're a private community, we're gated, nestled in the mountains, so there is no way this was military. Were three amber orbs, one on top and two closely aligned underneath. And as I say, I always go back to this sighting because I saw this up close. And here, my background for the last over 40 years has been to disseminate prevention education of vital health issues to the community. And I produce video and workbook curriculums on vital health issues that are currently being distributed by Discovery Education on AIDS and teen pregnancy and substance abuse, so forth. So my first thought was to grab my video camera, but it was downstairs. And as you'll hear from many people who have had paranormal experiences, they don't move. You want to take everything in, and I did. I tried to take everything in mentally, the size, the shape, the color. They were about 3 to 6 feet each. They were actually oval shaped, like an egg on its side. And I called them an orb because the light did not extend outside the edge. It was self-contained. It was a uniform amber color throughout, and it didn't glare at all. Every other light out there glared. And I thought, geez, if I don't get a picture of this, nobody's going to believe it. And I go running to the closet to grab my 35 millimeter that I keep handy for beautiful sunsets. I collect sunsets. And my husband calls me back and says, "Get over here quick. One of them is disappearing." And as we both watched, and I have to say, it's difficult to describe it in terms that we can understand, other than the fact that, and I'm telling you, I was really, really fixated on this top orb. It started to implode like a dimmer switch, very, very slowly, mechanically, as if there was an intelligence behind it. And when it disappeared, it still felt like it was there. Yeah. So I immediately stepped out on the balcony, took a quick shot of the two lower orbs, and we have a picture of that if you want to show it.
Is this it right here?
Nope, it's
Nope.
the first one of the series there. It's actually the last one. The first one are the two close orbs. Nope, keep
Nope.
going back.
Good work, Tony.
I know.
That's 2 months before the mass sighting.
I
This
gotta
is
find
2
it.
years.
Tony, that's a picture of Bigfoot. Please, we're talking about the Phoenix Lights
Actually,
tonight.
there's arrows pointing to it.
Oh, let me look here.
Anyway, the
I'll find it.
I immediately noticed an eerie silence, as if time had stopped. It was just bizarre, and that's it. And you can see the two lower orbs on the left-hand side. What's significant about this picture, now, not only did I notice an eerie silence, as if time had stopped, it was just so unusual. And going through my mind as I was intently watching these two lower orbs, I was thinking, and I didn't share this with us all until after the mass sighting 2 years later. Who are you? What are you? Did I know I'm here? I'd love to meet you. It really felt like something was watching me as intently as I was watching these orbs. And the next thing I remember, the left bottom orb started to implode, and I quickly shot a picture of that. I think we have a picture of that to show the audience. And that was the last thing I remember from that sighting. But what was significant is that I actually caught one of the orbs, the left bottom orb, half disappeared, and the right one's still there. There you go. Now, what's really significant about this too, not only the fact that it verified for me that we did see something unusual, it was right in front of us, and I did get a picture of it, but I didn't even know who to show it to. It's in the negative. That's what's really significant about these 35 millimeters. They cannot be explained or denied. If we go back to the first one, which is really significant at this point, you'll see in the background, in the distance, are 4 lights in a row. Do we see that?
Yes.
Yep.
With the arrow pointing. Well, what's really significant, and then go to the next one, the last picture of that series, not only did the orbs move, but the orbs at a distance disappeared as the close orbs were disappearing. What makes this significant and important is that this is the same exact phenomena in the distance as I would also capture 2 months before the mass sighting and actually during the mass sighting, while thousands of people were seeing what I had been seeing. Now, did not see anything closely, even remotely close to these orbs for 2 years, and wondered, even though I didn't even know who to show the pictures to, I knew no one who was involved with the topic, but wondered what this advanced technology was doing outside our bedroom window. And then suddenly, in January of 97, I see 3 orbs in a row far west, and I noticed they're huge, they're amber, they're inner formation, even though it was an equidistant line formation, and thinking, wow, that's strangely similar to 95, even though they're at a distance. And I watched each one from the right to left implode very, very slowly, just like 95. Well, I mentioned it to my husband. He kind of blew it off. It's amazing how everybody comes from a different background, from a different upbringing, from a different belief system. Some people can't deal with this topic. Some people don't want to, and that's okay. And if you want to feed into a logical explanation, I certainly tried to look for one for the last 22 years. That's okay. Everyone in their own time. But now there's data to really look at. And what's significant is the next night, my husband was at one of his medical board meetings. He was on several medical and hospital boards at the time. And I noticed the same 3 lights in a row are now in front of South Mountain. And they were in front of South Mountain because the South Mountain is just south of the airport. And there's red blinking lights on the top of the mountain that are warning the aircraft coming into Sky Harbor that there's a mountain there. So I thought, well, enough. I'm going to go my video camera and get a picture of this. So I get it out to the front of the house, and I got about 18 seconds worth. The battery went dead, and it was charged. I went inside, I plug it in. It's about 8 o'clock. About 8:30, my husband comes up the drive, and again, we're pretty high on the mountain, and I go outside, and I said, remember, honey, last night I told you about those 3 lights that were far west, and that were in formation about a half an hour ago. The same 3 lights in the same formation were right in front of South Mountain. As I'm pointing, just like this, they appeared in the same spot. And I thought, whoa, I've got to get a picture of this. And again, I don't believe in coincidence. In video, they're much smaller, they're white, they flicker. But if you study them, the formations are very compelling. But I ran upstairs, I grabbed my 35 millimeter, I get on the balcony to shoot the 3. And suddenly 6 lights across, massive span, over a mile wide, pop up on top of the 3. And I start clicking away. Now we can get to those other pictures, because the first one, not having an explanation for 95, I was actually shaking. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, is this a mothership or a fleet or whatever? If we can grab that picture, it's really the first one of that series. Go back, please.
Oh, wait a minute.
It's
I think
kind of
it's this one.
wavy.
Yeah,
There
right there.
you go.
Yep.
There you go. And it's wavy because I was shaking. And but thank goodness I kept clicking away. And the second picture is very significant. If we can grab that one. Yes, thank you. 5 lights in a V with 2, it seems, underneath. Well, this picture was taken 2 months before the mass sighting in January of 97. During the mass sighting, there were thousands of people that described the phenomenon now called the Phoenix Lights.
Yeah, but hold on. Did other
Yeah.
people see this one as well in January?
Wait a minute. On March 13th, they described it as 5 lights in a V formation with 2 trailing. And as I continued clicking away, that last picture in that series, actually the V turned. Okay, if you can grab that picture. And what's significant about that picture is that it was very unnerving, I have to tell you. And I did not sleep that well. There you go. And if you can see, now let's keep that picture for a second, because the next morning I called around and found air traffic controllers at Sky Harbor International Airport who saw the same thing at the same time. And what they share with me, they were very forthcoming initially, is that they also saw the 3 at 8 o'clock. And then at 8:30, when they showed up again, over Class B restricted airspace, there's a 30-mile radius around the center of the airport. Anyone that calls into that airspace must call into the tower. And no one did. So they got alarmed and they looked on radar, did not show up on radar. They took their high-powered binoculars to look, and in their own words, they described 6 points of light, totally equidistant from each other, massive span, over a mile wide, that seemed to be attached to something, but they couldn't quite see what these lights were attached to, which you would also hear from thousands of people 2 months later. And it turned, actually one of them was a meteorologist, and said that the entire formation of lights turned against the wind and then elevated slowly and moved behind South Mountain. So I said, so what was it? And there was silence. And then one of the air traffic controllers said, beats me. I said, you're air traffic controllers, you're supposed to know it's in our airspace. They had no idea. They ruled out every conventional aircraft, balloons, helicopters, Chinese lanterns, even skydivers with lights. We kept in contact. I continued photographing these phenomena, these unexplained aerial phenomena, up into and including, and there were other people that were also photographing them as well, by the way, for days before, up into and including March 13th. Unbeknownst to me, thousands of people were seeing what I had been seeing for 2 years. And what's really significant about this sighting, and there's so much mis and disinformation out there, not only is the Phoenix Lights mass sighting now hailed as the most documented, most witnessed, and most important mass anomalous sighting in modern times, if not all times. But what happened on March 13th is so significant. Most people have no clue, even ufologists don't know the facts, because as it turned out, not only were there lights that seemed to be attached to something in V and delta and boomerang formations at rooftop level, but there were 10 different craft. After a 12-year study of thousands of reports from the National UFO Reporting Center in Seattle, Washington, Arizona MUFON, Mutual UFO Network, Village Labs, which was a huge computer lab here that actually was a clearinghouse for many of the reports from March 13th, 1997, as well as former Councilwoman Vice Mayor Frances Barwood, who received over 1,000 reports. She was the only elected official that innocently asked for an investigation months later and it was just plastered by the media. There was so much ridicule and snickering. But at any rate, after a 12-year study, it was concluded that there were 10 different craft. And we just recently found out from Peter Davenport, the director of the UFO Reporting Center in Seattle, Washington, that one of these craft was 8 miles wide.
Wow.
That's mind-boggling. Now we're talking
That is mind-boggling, is right.
rooftop level, just gliding very, very slowly, actually silently. That was so eerie to most people. And some people saw it take off at blink speed. Other people saw it split in half. If you go to the GAP page, GAP, Geospatial Animation Project, which has illustrations and animations of these 10 different craft, and they're really different. Now, whether it was one craft that could morph into looking differently, or the perspective from where the person was standing, or a parade. And that's what the investigators finally concluded after looking at all the data over 12 years, that not only was there a parade of different formations of orbs as well as craft, but it wasn't just over Arizona, and it wasn't 2 hours or a couple hours as you would hear in the media. And it wasn't just 1 or 2 events, it was many, many events at the same time in Arizona. And it actually started at 3 p.m. in the afternoon on March 13th. 5 o'clock hour, it was seen by Native Americans in New Mexico. 7 o'clock hour in California. And there is also 2 reports from 2 separate airline pilots, commercial airline pilots, that were flying over Las Vegas and saw one of these craft cover Las Vegas in the 11 o'clock hour. And the bulk of reports came in between 8 and 10. So I can understand how the media might misinterpret, because most people were outside actually looking up at the sky, call it a coincidence, at the Hale-Bopp comet, which was very clear in the northwest sky that night, when they also caught a glimpse of these anomalous aerial phenomena. Now, these sightings continued all the way until 5:30 the next morning, when a Boeing crew, and this is the last credible report we have, were coming into Sky Harbor and saw one of these craft cover the tarmac. So it was many, many events over a dozen hours on March 13th, 1997. And some people even saw these orbs detach from the main object, go out into the environment, and then redock with it. If you look at the GAP page on the Phoenix Lights Network website, you'll see one of these crafts split in 2 and then shot straight up. And actually, there was a call at 3 a.m. the next morning, and we have some of that recording, very professional, very detailed, from an alleged crewman from Luke Air Force Base. We have it in the documentary so people can hear it for themselves. Called the National UFO Reporting Center at 3 a.m. the next morning to report that one of these craft was actually hovering over Phoenix, central Phoenix, about 8:30 that evening. Military jets from Luke Air Force Base were sent out to intercept it and get gun camera film, which we heard that they did. As they approached it, the light started to dim, and then the entire thing blinked out and disappeared. And the alleged crewman said that he was one of the people that helped one of the pilots out of his aircraft because he was so shaken up by it. So we're talking about incredible technology. And by the way, Luke Air Force Base was supposedly on lockdown after that. So they were well aware of what was happening.
Dr. Lynne, let me ask you this. Now, it fascinates me that you mentioned Las Vegas, Phoenix, and Arizona, even California. It seems like the spacecraft wanted to be seen because they're going over major cities. Why do you think in slow? It's almost like a parade. So why do you feel that they chose the cities? I mean, they could have been in the middle of the desert where nobody hardly saw it at all.
They were actually seen all over the state. Okay,
right.
And one of the craft did go down the most populated central corridor, but you have to look at the facts, and that's what I try to do. The data speaks for itself. And as a scientist, I really tried to look at the facts as credible facts, as meticulously as possible. And when you're, considering that thousands of people happened to be outside looking up at the Hale-Bopp comet that night, that was very clear in the northwest sky, and then these phenomena start showing up. Like you said, it seemed that whoever did this wanted to be seen. The other thing that was really significant is that to date, and it's 22 years later, after 22 years, we have not had not one report of harm threat, or abduction associated with the Phoenix Lights phenomena. Can't
Well,
speak
actually,
for
Doctor, why
others.
don't you talk about that for a second? Because when it actually happened, people weren't afraid and running around. They all seemed to feel very calm and just intrigued by the event, right?
Oh, it's amazing when you talk to the witnesses. Their reports are so detailed and so heartfelt, and people will consistently tell you that they were in awe, they were in wonder. In fact, many have told me that they were blessed. They felt blessed having that experience. I mean, that doesn't happen with flares or balloons or helicopters or whatever. And what was really curious and interesting is that after thousands, and we're talking over 10,000 people, I'm sure. I mean, I've had over 20,000 emails myself, saw something so unusual at rooftop level. There were people that said they could have thrown a rock at it. And what's also significant is that we are so inundated with threat, and harm. Just the fact that they had that reaction is really significant, because 6 months before the mass sighting, the movie Independence Day was very popular. And children, also interesting, were usually the first people to see these mile or larger V-shaped formations of lights or craft coming towards them, and we're jumping out, up and down, Independence Day, Independence Day. But as it got closer, a calmness came over everyone, adults and children alike, a connectiveness to the phenomena that after it passed, they wanted to run after it. They wanted their parents to get in the car and chase it. Just when you look at the data, it's just fascinating.
That is a
How
very
it affected
interesting
it at
aspect
a
of
very
this.
deep level in real time and long term.
Doc, can you hold on for a second? We're going to take a quick break here, and we're going to come back and we're going to talk about more about the Phoenix Lights and find out what's developed since it occurred.
From our good friend George Norrie.
Join me, George Norrie, in Indian Wells, California, for the 7th Annual Contact in the Desert UFO Conference, May 31st to June 3rd. Contact in the Desert is an epic weekend of adventure filled with exciting explorations into ancient aliens, human origins, crop circles, UFO sightings, disclosure, and the newest evidence of ongoing contact. This amazing weekend offers over 50 lectures, 40 workshops, 8 exciting panels, special events, and a luncheon that I'm hosting. Contact in the Desert also features leading experts including Giorgio Tsoukalos, David Wilcock, Linda Moulton Howe, Michael Tellinger, Eric von Daniken, Doc Wallach, and many more important researchers and scientists in the field. Contact in the Desert is your place for inside information. Join us at the contactinthedesert.com to get your tickets today. It's time to make contact. That's contactinthedesert.com. Don't miss it. Contactinthedesert.com.
All right, we're back. Truth be told, yes, get your tickets to Contact in the Desert. Please, you'll go see Dr. Lynne Kitei. And we're here talking with Dr. Kitei about the Phoenix Lights. This was a historical event. And listen, I know many of us that didn't get to see it, we wish we were there. But now, we talked about, mostly in America, but did people in Mexico, because it's, very close to Mexico, did they also report any sightings of the crafts also?
Well, that's a great question. First, I wanted to share that I'm very excited to be part of the Contact in the Desert. My lecture, which is going to be on Friday morning at 10:30, we actually delve into the media and how the media, which I do want to get to in a second. Okay. I want to answer your question first. And then I'm doing a workshop later that night at 9 o'clock on Friday that is really going to delve into how one can connect with these other phenomena, because Mexico is a sterling example, actually, of being very open to these phenomena, as are indigenous cultures worldwide. I had no idea. Coincidentally, 6 months before the mass sighting, I was invited to present my substance prevention education program at the Gila Bend Indian Reservation, which is actually in the basin between South Mountain and the Estrella Mountain Range a few miles back, and very sacred ground. And after the mass sighting, if you go to the photo page on the Phoenix Lights Network website, which is a unique collection of the 35 millimeter photographs that I've collected of these phenomena that have been analyzed and authenticated by university and military optical experts as being true unknowns. It's still unexplained and cannot be denied. They're in the negatives, 35 millimeter negatives. But I started to notice that these phenomena were popping up from our vantage point on the mountain, right where South Mountain and the Estrellas intersect. So I called them up, and they usually don't talk to outsiders, but I had helped them out. And I said, did anybody happen to see strange lights on March 13th? And the principal started to giggle. And I said, is that funny? And he said, are you kidding? We've been looking up with them for centuries. We call them sky people, light beings. It's part of their culture. I had no idea. That was the first I had heard of it. And then when I really looked into that aspect of these phenomena, not only did they tell me that the Estrella Mountains got its name because of these phenomena, meaning star in Spanish, but there are petroglyphs, drawings, century-old petroglyphs, drawings in the rocks there of the same exact thing that my husband saw. We have a picture of that, as well as the boomerang that people saw on March 13th. And they believe that there is a portal or a gateway in that area. Now, I'm, like I said, I'm a healthy skeptic, but I have to say, if you look at the data on the Phoenix Lights Network photo page, consistently these phenomena keep popping up right there where South Mountain and the Estrellas intersect. Anyway, what's also interesting about Mexico is that in 1991, they also had a celestial event happening. There was an eclipse, and people were looking up at the sky, and they also had many UFOs show up during that period. So whoever's doing this seems to know what's happening here and know that people are looking up and want to make us aware in a very non-threatening, gentle way that they are here.
Hey, Doc, can I ask you a question here? We got a question from the chat room here. Did anybody experience or report experiencing any sort of connection or telepathy or anything with the craft?
Oh yes, we have. That's a great question, because we had great question. We had a number of people that actually there is a in my book there is a description, a very detailed description from a psychiatrist and his family that were coming up from Tucson to Phoenix with the wife was driving, the doctor was in the passenger seat, his daughter and a friend were in the back seat, and one of these over mile wide craft was right above them for many, many, many minutes. And he happened to look outside the window at it very intently and noticed that the wings were spread not only across the highway, which is a huge highway, but on both sides of the highway. Nobody said a word to each other for over 6 months. And they saw a televised program talking about the Phoenix Lights, and suddenly a floodgate opened. And they started talking about it and remembered, very interesting too. Number one, the morning after the mass sighting, and this is really cool, I called the air traffic controllers again to see because it seemed like the same exact phenomena had popped up in the same exact location, the 6 lights across, over a mile wide. And I called them up to see if they saw it and if it was in fact over Class B restricted airspace, which they confirmed that it was. Over about 1,000 feet altitude. They also shared with me that there was a pilot that called in, a private pilot that was on approach about a half mile out from Sky Harbor that called in to say, what the hell are these lights in front of me? Never said what his name was, but I actually put that in my book because to me it was significant that a pilot, besides them confirming that it was over Class B restricted airspace, where it shouldn't have been, there was a pilot that called in that reported the lights. Well, it just so happens that about a year ago, that pilot came forward. And who was it? None other than Kurt Russell, the actor, which is really cool because he saw the same exact thing that I was filming at the same exact time, which is really, really neat. And the more credible people that come forward, that's one of the reasons once thousands of people saw what I had been seeing, which my whole accomplished medical career aside, for 7 years to try to find a logical explanation for what I witnessed and photographed. I have yet to find it 22 years later, but I kept an intricate journal it was just so curious to me. And you'll hear from many people. I don't know if you guys have had sightings, but many people that have had experiences want to know what it is, want to find out what's going on. And every day, military conversations that I had, which I'll get to in a sec, as well as witness reports and the history. I had no idea that there was such a history. And as I mentioned, Native cultures worldwide are much more open to these phenomena as being otherworldly. And actually, many feel that there are spirits coming to give them, and ancestors coming to give them guidance and knowledge and inspiration. And certainly I've been inspired by this. But anyway, I finally did come forward after 7 years in a 750-page journal later with the first edition of the book, 250 pages, condensed the most credible data that I had discovered, as well as a story unfolding in and of itself, which I'll get to in a sec. And now it's in its third print. I recommend the Kindle version, the ebook, because it has colored pictures and live links, so people can go explore. And it's just amazing how the story has evolved since 1997.
Hey, hold on a second here, Doctor. You studied this for 22 years, and after studying this for 22 years, your conclusion is that this was in fact an alien craft.
I've never said that.
Well, I'm asking. I guess I'm asking. That's what I'm asking.
I've never said what it is.
What is your conclusion?
That it is, and that it's time we get this topic out in the open and address it, accept it, and study it, so we can find out who's driving these things, as well as move forward in our own evolution. One of the other, just because we don't have the technology yet to definitively define what these things are, it doesn't mean they're not real. We may just be looking on the AM dial for an FM frequency. And one of the other reasons I came forward as a physician was to let people know that they're not alone, that they're not crazy. Even though most anomalies can be explained, only a small percentage cannot. But it's time we stop with the snickering and the ridicule. And that's what was happening for 7 years after the mass sighting, especially the first year. As I mentioned, after the mass sighting, which was really curious, there was no explanation, no investigation, nothing from the military or the government. And even Frances Barwood, Councilwoman Vice Mayor Frances Barwood at the time, I mentioned, because so many of her constituents had called her to say, why isn't there an investigation? Just mentioned it. She didn't see it, but she was doing her job. And she asked, why isn't there an investigation? It's just a public safety issue, because these things were so close to the rooftops. Right. And she was plastered by the media. I was so glad that I had kept anonymous. And it wasn't until, and this is significant too, most people have no clue about how the story unfolded. Very interesting that there was nothing until June 18th, front page USA Today article, for whatever reason, opened our sighting up to people outside of Arizona. It was the first time that it really got out of Arizona worldwide. And we were deluged by media from all over the world. And they too, once they started asking the witnesses and they were listening to their descriptions, they were saying, my goodness, they're so detailed and so heartfelt. Why isn't there an investigation? Why isn't there an explanation? Interestingly, the very next morning, on June 19th, 97, we get an announcement that former Governor Symington, Fife Symington, was calling an unscheduled press conference for that afternoon to reveal the culprit of the lights over Phoenix. And everybody took it seriously. He comes marching out, one of his aides, in a giant alien head costume, and made a mockery of it, which was really disconcerting to the witnesses, especially parents that were with children that saw something that was 2 or 3 malls wide, and he's making a joke out of it.
Yeah,
well,
it's a shame.
I have to tell. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm saying it's a shame. I mean, I know he recanted and everything, but it's a shame he did that right then.
It is, and for whatever reason he did it, it put a lid on it. And I have to say, at that point, because to me it wasn't a joke, and I called every military base and I tried to get higher ups to find out if they knew anything. I just wanted to know what happened, and they were more curious about my data, my photo data, than giving an explanation. They were just as curious as we were. Suddenly, a month later, on July the 24th, I get a call from one of the heads of PR from the Air National Guard. And she says, oh, Dr. Lynne, I think we know what those lights were back in March. And I was thrilled because as I said, I was looking for any logical explanation. She says, do you believe in all these months? We're talking about 5 months here. Nobody ever looked at the log for visiting Air National Guard. And the Maryland Air National Guard was in town sending off military illumination flares in Operation Snowbird, which I later found out in military terms means diversionary tactical maneuvers. So they may have been sending off flares, but there's not one report by anyone that saw the true unknowns
Right.
that even comes close to what flares look like. But I said to her, now wait a minute. When was the Maryland Air National Guard in town? She says March 1st to the 15th. I said, were they in town in January? She said, oh no. I said, are you sure? She said, absolutely not. I said, well, I have 35 millimeter photographs of the same exact phenomena in the same exact location, confirmed both times in January and the morning after the mass sighting by air traffic controllers at Sky Harbor International Airport as appearing over Class B restricted airspace about 1,000 feet altitude. And she says to me, you never told me that. And I said, besides, you're trying to tell me that flares, and by then I had educated myself to anything logical, including military flares, that drift and drop with the wind. They're on parachutes. They are haphazard and cannot keep information for less, they even are information for less than a couple seconds, fall to the ground and have huge smoke trails that are illuminated by the flare itself, and they're used to illuminate the area around it. Again, not one person described that. And I said to her, you're trying to tell me that flares that cannot keep a formation traverse the entire state in a rock solid, over mile wide, equidistantly spaced array, V for A, for hours? And she says, I have a call coming in. I'll get back to you. Well, I'm still waiting, guys.
Never did, right?
Never got the call. Never got the call.
Right. So that kind of, that was, talk about disconcerting, because the next day, and I did call, by the way, the Arizona Republic to talk to the fellow who was going to be coming out with the article the next day, and he wouldn't even talk to me. He said he was on a deadline. He wouldn't even listen to anything I had to say. And the next morning, front page, Phoenix lights were flares. Well, okay. Now talk about putting a lid on things. This really quieted things down for a bit, but not for the witnesses, I have to say, including myself. I mean, we knew that they definitely weren't flares, even though they may have sent off flares to divert attention away from the real deal. Thousands of people saw something that was so extraordinary. And it's very interesting that 3 years later, former Councilwoman Vice Mayor Frances Barwood, who really got so much flack, I mean, it was horrible what the media did to her, was running for Secretary of State on a platform to get answers for the Phoenix lights and asking for a reenactment. Now, this is really important, because right before the 3rd anniversary, we get a public announcement. I mean, they on the radio, on TV, that 3 Air National Guards were coming into town to show everyone the Phoenix lights. Now, whether they thought that it would diffuse the issue, confuse the issue, whatever, it was a dire failure for them. It really was. I mean, they had their shot and they blew it. If you go to the news page, which has lots of other terrific news reports, including Kurt Russell's report from UK, it's a wonderful report. But if you scroll down to about the middle of the page, there's a square there that says AZ Family. And they did an incredible report where you can see what the military tried to do. It's actual footage from what they tried to do. They tried to make a triangle. It was upside down. It fell apart immediately. It had huge smoke trails, just what flares do. And to this day, the Phoenix lights have never been reenacted or explained. And yet they continue to appear. And if you go to my photo page, you'll see they continue to appear not only through Arizona, but throughout the world. And other countries are much more open to these things, as I said, as being otherworldly, which is also a very interesting point, is that 10 years after the mass sighting, for whatever reason, our former governor, who had mocked the sighting months later, came forward to disclose bravely that he actually witnessed one of these mile-wide craft.
Wow.
And as an awarded military pilot, in his own opinion, they definitely were not flares, and that it was otherworldly.
Well, Dr. Lynne, we only have just like 5 minutes left. It's hard to believe the time has gone so fast. And people in the chat room also want to know, and I'm curious, that's 22 years ago, and it was a big event, a historic event. But since then, what other sightings? There has to be other sightings that have appeared. Have you seen of other people encountered over Phoenix or around Phoenix?
Absolutely. There are sightings constantly. If you go to the National UFO Reporting Center and look on their website, if you go to Arizona MUFON and look on their website, I myself had captured numerous. Please go to the photo page on the Phoenix Lights Network website. There's actually more. In 2013, and I'll be showing this at my presentations at the Contact in the Desert, I photographed 4 orbs in an equidistant kind of an arc. And unbeknownst to me, until just recently, because I went back to these pictures to see what else I had there. And in one of the 35 millimeter negatives, there's actually an orb as I was out on the balcony right in front of me, like whizzing by. You can see the tail as it's moving in front of me. I didn't see it when I was taking the picture, but it's there. And there's other pictures too. Now if you scroll down to the bottom of the photo page, you'll see some of my sunset pictures that have giant rod-shaped craft that also I did not see when I took the pictures, but they're in the same exact spot, the same exact thing, a month apart. In 2000, November and December of 2000. And these rod-shaped motherships, they call them, have been seen not only over, yes, there you go, not only over the Superstition Mountains here, and they've been seen worldwide, but here we have reports. Just recently there was a report of one of these craft over the Navajo Nation, and they happened to have a big sighting the day before ours of these orbs. They thought it would make big news, of these orbs going around in circles and then changing colors, and they're so used to it and open to it, they brought out their lawn, the whole town brought out their lawn chairs and was watching it for over an hour. They also have seen these mile-wide and larger craft, huge, massive cigar-shaped craft that have orbs or little disc-shaped crafts coming out from it. So the sightings continue throughout Arizona and throughout the world. And as I said, it's just time we get this out in the open and address it and accept it and study it. So
absolutely.
we can find out
we're all for that.
Who's driving these things and move forward.
And the people that are really interested in this, and I know there's lots, if you're in the area and you're not in the area, you still have time to get tickets to Contact in the Desert. And again, tell people what day you're going to be speaking and your lecture.
Absolutely. I'll be speaking on Friday, and I'll be showing how the story unfolded. You've heard a little bit of the story. I just told you the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more lurking underneath, let me tell you. But I'll be talking about how the story unfolded through the media. It's fascinating how some media just embraced it and others criticized it, and how the story has evolved. Right. And then in the evening at 9 o'clock, I'll be talking about how these phenomena are affecting people at such a deep soul level in real time and long term. It is a fascinating study that I've also done in the book. There's a connection between all unexplained phenomena that I found, because a number of witnesses had near-death experiences as children. It was reawakened by the Phoenix Lights mass sighting, which I found very poignant because I did too. And I'm going to be talking about that experience, which was very profound, changed my life forever, as it does most anybody that has a near-death experience, and the connection that might very well be part of the Phoenix Lights in my workshop. So I hope people will join me there, as well as look at the Phoenix Lights Network website, which is packed with information to explore and consider. And the book, The Phoenix Lights, A Skeptic's Discovery That We Are Not Alone, is in its 3rd print. And the documentary has won over a dozen International Film Festival awards. We're so proud. And it's such an accomplishment that a documentary of the genre has been so embraced by the film community. And also just recently, and I'll be also doing a youth program at the MUFON Symposium on Sunday, July 28th. That I've come out with a book, 150-page graphic novel, activities coloring book for all ages. That is just a compilation. I've been working on a curriculum for schools for 7 years and wanted to do something that people can have in their hands and actually not only see the story of the Phoenix Lights as it unfolded, there we go, but also the 10 different crafts that you can draw. We have a map maker who is amazing, David Wisby, who came to Phoenix and actually drew the 10 different craft to scale. And we have 80 different crop circles, as well as fun activities, word finders and crossword puzzles and all kinds of wonderful activities, and as well as the answers. That's for the whole family.
Well, again, this is great. And so get your tickets. And we hope that everybody joins us, because we'll be there also at Contact in the Desert. But Dr. Lynne, thank you so much. Interesting conversation. Thank you for sharing your experience and doing the work and getting out there and taking those pictures, because that's what we like to see. And but until Contact, we'll see you soon.
The data speaks for itself, and keep looking up.
That's right. That's right. All right, everybody. We are out of this hour, so stick around for the next hour. We have another great guest, but we'll see you in just about 10 minutes. But until then, go to our website, truthbetoldworldwide.com, or subscribe to our YouTube channel right there below. All right. Take care. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.